I like to define driving style as the relationship between your hand and the poi head. In other words, the different ways you can make the poi move around. There are two main categories of driving style, linear and circular. And as you might guess, they're named for whether your hand moves in a line or whether it moves in a circle.
The linear driving styles are strongly related to the chapter called Know Your Orbit. The important part is when you move your hand relative to the poised circle. To get a feeling for linear driving styles, try them on a very small scale. You have to put energy into your poi to get it to swing over the top of its orbit. A common way is to pull up when the poi is at the bottom of its circle. The small up and down motion of your hand makes a line. The more you exaggerate the line, the more obvious an effect you have by accentuating the arcs. You can do the same with side-to-side motion, being precise with when you move. There's enough to cover that we gave linear driving styles their own chapter, called Linear. Now, we'll go over circular driving styles. The first two, extension and isolation, are done by making one circle with your hands for each one circle of the poi, 1 to 1. An extension is when your hand is at the same angle of the orbit as your poi head, thus making the poi's circle bigger than it was with your hand stationary. An isolation is when your hand is circling at the point opposite your poi head, making the poi's circle smaller than it was with your hand stationary. The relation of your hand to the poi head is split time. The next two circular driving styles are spin and anti-spin. If your poi is spinning and you want to trace a circle with your hand, you can either circle in the same direction as the poi, that's spin, or you can circle in the opposite direction as the poi, that's anti-spin. What you're watching are only simple examples. There are innumerable ways to apply spin and anti-spin. These driving styles, instead of having the 1-to-1 ratio of poi orbit to hand circle like before, have the ratio of 1 to however many you want. The slower you trace your hand circle, the more loops you can add with poi orbits. The final driving style we'll introduce is the cat-eye. The cat-eye is a 1-to-1, but also an anti-spin. You make one hand circle for each poi orbit, but you trace them in opposite directions. This technique has its own DVD chapter called The Cat-Eye. To learn a little more about the driving styles we've covered, we'll look at them again through the lens of proportion. You can do an extension in many sizes, from very small, getting bigger to the size of 1 poi, a unit circle, to the size of 2 poi, or as big as you can reach. Note that these are easiest when the center of rotation is a body part, like your shoulder or your elbow. Sometimes, though, the center of rotation is a point in space. The hand circle of an isolation can be tiny, growing to the size of 1 poi, the most common isolation, and enlarging to approach a head isolation. It's rather challenging to keep a head isolation going. By changing the proportion of spin and anti-spin patterns, we change the accentuation of the loops and arcs. Here you see spin on a small circle and the effect of tracing a larger circle. This is the same progression with anti-spin. Changing the proportion of the hand's movement in a cat-eye changes its effect dramatically. The chapters that are closely related to this one are Know Your Orbit, Linear, Symmetry and Proportion, and the cat-eye.